Welcome to Braver Leaders, the podcast where we meet with some of the world's best leaders and chat through where they got leadership right, but importantly, where they got it very wrong. Where they stuffed it up, got reprimanded, suspended, or even fired, and all the gory details that go with it. Each week, we'll meet with a new leader, hear their trials, tribulations, and what they have learned from their experiences. Leadership isn't always pretty, is it? But by being vulnerable and talking about our shortcomings, you can grow the empathy within your team and show your team that you're worthy of their trust. So buckle up and let's get ready to hear what it takes to be a braver leader. Welcome to Braver Leaders, the podcast where leaders share their story, own it, and create trust. I'm Sam Harvey, your podcast host. I'm a researcher, founder of Braver Leaders, and team performance coach. I am joined today by the wonderful Rawinia Judson. She is an authentic leadership coach, Maori healer, and she has done a fair amount of study in communication and psychology. And she's a very, very good friend of mine. Hi, Ra.
Hi Sam, how are you?
I am very, very well. Thank you, my friend. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm excited to have this conversation today and for us to go wherever it is that we need to go today.
Yeah, we were talking about that, weren't we? It'll just kind of go where it goes.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that I really love about you and I is our conversation flows quite easily and effortlessly.
Mm,
And I find that even though there's a lot of study and learning that I've done, there's always something that I can learn.
yeah,
Which I think is an
absolutely.
essential skill and trait as a leader, is being open to learning and putting on a beginner's mindset, no matter what it is that you know.
Yeah, totally, totally. And I'm so keen to dive into your, especially that title, the authentic leadership coach. I think when you said that to me, I was like, oh, that's so interesting. And my friend who actually has been on this podcast as well, Robin Abushadid, and I talked a lot about authenticity when delivering leadership identity. So I think you and her would get on like a house on fire with that topic. But before we do, I really want to hear a bit of your backstory. So can you tell us a little bit about who you are, and then I know you've got some vulnerable stories or stories you would like to share, which have shaped the way you do things today.
Hmm. Well, it wouldn't be right for me if I didn't start with who I am from a cultural perspective. And so, um, for those of you who don't know what a Maori healer is, so I'm Maori. I'm from New Zealand. Maori are the Indigenous people of New Zealand, or also Aotearoa. And so the way that we introduce ourselves is where we're from, first and foremost, rather than what it is that we do. And so where I'm from is the far north of New Zealand. So I whakapapa to Ngāi Takoto. That's my first iwi, which is on my grandfather's side. And then I also whakapapa to Waikato Tainui, which is on my grandmother's side, which is the Kingitanga, which is, you would have probably recently heard, we were appointed a Māori queen.
The
And
Queen, yeah,
so, yeah,
yep,
yeah. And so I also whakapapa through that line.
amazing.
So that's who I am from that cultural perspective. And it's really important for me to share, and often how I like to even introduce myself or get to know other people in a work personal context. So that's the first part.
Mm,
How I got to where it is that I am today, and specifically leadership,
mm,
is I was that person who always asked why.
mm,
So why are things the way that they are?
mm,
And I was very outspoken,
mm,
very opinionated, and I care a lot about people. And over the years, I had so many people confide in me around their experiences with managers, leaders, people that they've worked with. And a lot of the stories that I've heard over the years are things that are really close to my heart or things that I don't agree with and think that are wrong. And I wanted to be able to change that. And I believe that the way that we change that is by knowing who we are.
Yeah,
So
right.
our identity, where we're from,
Mm,
knowing who we are in terms of like all facets, as well as being true to our own personal values,
mm.
our own personal principles, and leading in that way and in that space to inspire people.
Interesting. And so, yeah, there's so much there, isn't there? And I think, we're going to talk today about how leaders can be better coaches. And I think you've set that up brilliantly for us there, haven't you? Because and you and I have spoken about this at length for quite some time now. I mean, we're building it together. Um, the idea that you can't be a good coach, you can't coach someone else, you can't be in a therapeutic style relationship until you understand yourself very well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really important because you need to understand what biases you're carrying
Mm,
and how your worldview, your experience
mm,
shapes the way that you see things.
mm,
So, like, for example, like the way that you see things and the way that I see things, whilst there's a lot of crossover, because we've spoken about it, there are a lot of things that we would do differently because of the fact that I'm Maori,
mm,
like I grew up in New Zealand, and it even comes down to, the fact that my mum died, and every experience that I've had has shaped who I am, therefore shaped how I see the world,
mm,
shaped my perspectives and the biases that I hold. And so if you don't know that about yourself,
mm.
then it's going to be challenging for you to be able to lead with empathy, for you to be able to
Yeah.
self-reflect and ask yourself, well, is this the right thing to be doing? Am I making assumptions here? Am I seeking to be curious?
Mm.
And so many other things that I could say around that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And so you mentioned a couple of things which have shaped your life in that last sentence. Can we go there?
Absolutely. I love going there. You know that.
Yeah, great.
We'll
I'll
just
leave
go
it.
right in deep, eh?
Yeah, 100%. And I
Um,
mean, that uh, I appreciate you being willing to. I want to say that up front because it's not an easy thing to do. That's the premise of what we do, right? Is actually showing that sharing vulnerably can create trust. So yeah, I appreciate you being willing
mm,
to.
yeah, yeah. I remember when I first started sharing, it took a lot for me to kind of unravel a lot of the self-judgment that I had
Mm,
initially and the fear around being judged by other people. But
mm,
as you say, it's like that vulnerability is what creates trust
mm.
and then also creates that connection. And so I'm always happy to share. Um, so I'd say the most pivotal or like the thing that I can really remember the most is my mum passing at the age of 19. And so she passed quite suddenly from a brain aneurysm.
Wow.
And there was like no like notice or
Wow.
no awareness. I just kind of got a phone call, had multiple missed phone calls from my aunt, and yeah, it was quite a traumatic event. I was in shock,
Mm,
and it really led me down a path of destruction
right.
because I didn't know how to deal with it. And I ended up seeking ways to try and kind of numb the pain that I was feeling
Mm,
through things like drinking, drugs, sex, really empty,
Mm,
unfulfilling things, but I didn't have the understanding or the capacity as to how do I deal with this in a healthy way. And that was all that I'd seen
yeah.
from the people around me, or that was all that was like modeled as, okay, if something's gone wrong, this is what you do. You drink, you go out, you party, you do
Mm,
that, and you just kind of like forget about it instead of, okay, well, what's a healthy way to move through this and work through that? So that's the very first one.
yeah, well, um, I have a lot of identification with that, as I know you know. And yeah, it is particularly New Zealand, Australia, England as well, UK, US, I think as well. Like that, that drinking culture is just. I think the word you said, it was modeled. That's a brilliant word for it, right? Because, you know, we look around us for how to act. Homophily is a strong predictor of behavior, right? Like that, if someone else is doing it, I'm going to do it. And my favorite actually in that is when you stand at the little green man or the little red man on the crossing and somebody else walks when it's red and you watch and not everyone, but a lot of other people will walk, right? And so
Mm.
that's like a really strong predictor of behavior, yeah. And so when you're surrounded by that in your society of, well, everyone else goes out and drinks, obviously that's the thing to do, and you don't really think of it as like a, well, I'm numbing, do you? You just go, oh, I think it's easier. You don't even have that thought, really, do you? It's not even like it's easier. It's just like, oh yeah, cool, that's good. And then I'm hungover, so that's why I feel terrible. Great. I'll just do it again. Yeah,
Until then, you have like another wake up call, really, which is
yeah,
kind of what ended up happening to me.
yeah.
It was, okay, well, if I continued to go down that route,
Mm,
something bad would have really happened, to be honest. And I was blacking out all of the time
yeah,
and got to a point where I was like, okay, well, I can either continue down this route. I'm actually really grateful. I had a friend of mine sit me down and intervene,
nice.
and he pretty much said to me, Rawinia, what are you doing?
Yeah, yeah.
And I really needed him to have that courage to have that hard conversation,
Mm,
because a lot of people wouldn't be willing to do that.
yeah,
And I don't think that I would have chosen something different if he hadn't have done that.
yeah. It's mad, isn't it? Like the amount of kind of, I guess, like sycophants that you're surrounded by sometimes, which is probably quite a harsh way to put it, but like people, it takes some real courage for a friend or a family member to go, you're being a dick, right? My sister did that to me actually. She didn't say exactly that, but she's like, "You're a bit of a dick when you drink, you know that, right?" And I was just like, "Really?" I thought it was awesome. And yeah, that courage to be able to say that, that wasn't what stopped me eventually, but like, you know, it definitely changed, like made me start thinking about it in a different way. But yeah, that courage is, those people are angels, right? Like they're sent from somewhere to be like, yo, I'm gonna knock you on a different path now. So
Yeah, I got goosebumps when you said that, because I think a lot of people look at people such as your sister, right?
yeah,
Where it's hard for her to say you're being a bit of a dick. Like it's
yeah.
not a nice thing to say to your brother.
I think
And
she kind of enjoys it, to
depending
be honest. But yes, I know I get your point.
Well, it's just like depending on what frame of mind
Yeah,
you're in,
yeah,
and how that person might receive that
yeah,
feedback
yeah.
that you're giving them. It's hard because it
Mm,
can hurt.
mm,
And then at the same time, one of the things that I've really learned over the years is truth is love.
mm.
And often what we can see or perceive as love is actually enabling versus actually telling
Yeah,
someone the truth is what's most loving.
yeah, yeah, for sure. It shows a certain level of emotional. maturity, doesn't it? To be able to say, hey, you need to look at what you're doing.
Mm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So thank you for sharing all of that. And as I said, I relate a lot to that. So I'm the theme I'm kind of picking up here, which you and I, as I say, have talked about at length, when and like kind of segueing here to leader as coach, is this real the first step of being in that world, or being a decent coaching leader, is self-knowledge. Is that right?
Absolutely. I I mean, this is my personal opinion.
Mm.
I think it's challenging to be an effective leader if you don't know yourself.
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
Like, sure, you could probably manage people, but there's a difference between being a manager and there's a difference between being a leader.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that self-knowledge and you don't have that self-awareness and you haven't had the courage and the willingness to look at all the hard stuff
Mm.
and the stuff that perhaps you bury your head in the sand about, or you avoid, or
Mm.
you numb,
Mm.
it's really challenging for you to have emotional intelligence and emotional maturity to be able to lead people who, perhaps might be experiencing a range of different things. Like when you're a leader, you've got
Mm.
however many personalities,
Mm.
backgrounds, ethnicities, cultures, socioeconomic like experiences, so much more, and you need to have a really strong self-awareness as to what's needed in each and every different scenario, context, and environment.
Mm. Yeah. And when you are in there, it's regardless of how self-aware you are, like it's still difficult. It's still difficult, isn't it? Like being around, like you can learn as much as you like and be as self-aware as you like. And when you go into the fray, you're still going to be challenged. That's my kind of my experience really is like, you go and still a study you like, and then you go back into it and you hang out with people and say, oh man, this is hard. And so that that base coat of self-awareness is so key, right? To go, oh, I'm annoyed, or oh, that's annoying me, but something about that is annoying me. It's not them, it's me that's actually being triggered, right? And to be able to remove yourself, or understand yourself so well that you can set really healthy boundaries, that kind of thing as a leader, right? And so um, when we're talking about a coaching leader, it's that, okay, so you're in a situation where somebody is coming to you, and you mentioned this before. I don't know if you mentioned this at the start, or before we were, started recording, but about, people come to you often with their kind of tales of leadership woe, um, and that ability to kind of, and I imagine there's a reason for that, because you're very good at just holding space, right? Like that, you're one of the people I think in my life that I know that I will be able to say something and finish my sentence just like that.
Mm.
So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's a skill, right?
Mm.
And it's a coaching skill. And I say that, and it is quite a natural thing that a lot of people do have.
Mm.
And at the same time, it's something that can be developed, but that ability to hold space as a coach,
Mm.
you don't need to know anything and you often don't need to say anything. You just need
Mm.
to sit and listen. And then the outcome will often come from you sitting and listening and being non-judgmental
Mm.
and just having that presence that's needed.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's one part of it, right? And then what I
Kind of
really
the
loved
first
about
part, right?
well, yeah, but I also really what I really loved about what you said earlier with regards to like going away and studying and then coming back into the fray, it's like, yeah, I've got all this wisdom and knowledge, but when I go out into the world, like what I realize about myself anyway is that I know nothing.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't
It
matter.
doesn't matter,
Yeah.
but what matters is my willingness to be curious.
Mm,
And that comes from asking really great questions, which
mm,
is coaching.
mm. Yes, yeah. I read something the other day which well, I believe this, and I think I've read it before the other day as well. But coaching is nothing to do with helping with giving people advice, and it's everything to do with helping them find their own answers. And and for that reason alone, it's very person-centered, isn't it? Like I have a strong belief. I hold the belief that you can figure this out yourself, and all I have to do is just kind of sit there and go, okay, that's interesting. Tell me more. Okay, say a bit more. Is that right? Is that what I'm hearing? And just kind of repeating back to them what they've said and asking questions to help deepen their thinking, but having that belief all the way along that they can figure it out themselves. Right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's what coaching is versus that quote that you shared. A lot of people think coaching is giving advice
Yeah.
versus that's actually mentorship, which is very different.
Yeah.
Very different. Whereas what I love about coaching is it empowers the person and it supports the person, like you say, to be able to deepen their thinking,
Mm.
which also increases their self-leadership,
Yeah.
which then also increases their ability to take initiative.
Yeah.
And so, therefore, what you're doing is not only are you setting them up for success, but that also supports your business because
Mm.
then they're then starting to take initiative in ways
Yes.
that perhaps they wouldn't have previously because you're not just telling them the answers all of the time.
Yeah. The amount of times I hear, oh, they're just not taking any initiative. And then you examine the kind of system that they're operating in. It's like, okay, so if somebody comes to you with a problem, what do you do? Well, I let them know what to do. It's like, okay, cool. Wow. And they're not taking initiative. Got it. So yeah, no, I hear you. I totally agree. It's that kind of it is not the norm in our society, is it? And it's quite difficult to do actually when somebody comes to you and says, I've got this problem. We're kind of geared for pace, aren't we? Like the fastest route between A and B, in most people's minds, is to just here's the answer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
they the it's a slower route perhaps initially to go, well, what do you think?
Yeah.
And also I think checking yourself about, because often we will give the advice and not actually have the knowledge. So then that's a really good time if you go, do I actually know this? And so, well, if I'm not sure, then it's a really good opportunity for you to flick into coaching mode. Do you think?
Mm-hmm. 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 I really love what you spoke about that kind of that's just like a really short term kind of route in terms of going at pace.
Mm,
And like whilst it might be efficient to begin with, like is it effective from a long-term solution
yeah,
or in terms of like where you want your business to go?
yeah,
If you can be coaching your team and supporting your team to grow in their self-leadership and the way that they see things, then inevitably your business is going to grow and it's going to profit because people are taking initiative
mm,
versus that short-term thinking, well, I need to go faster. And sometimes there's this saying that I learned when I worked in corporate, and I'm not going to mention the name of the business that I worked for, but what I did love was a phrase that we often use, which was slow down to speed up.
yeah, yeah,
And I found that it was really effective. It's like actually slowing down, there's so much benefit in it
mm,
because it means that you actually have the space to be able to speed up.
mm.
But if you just keep going and you keep going and you keep going, then the wheels are going to fall off.
Yeah.
because you're not taking any time to actually maintain things. If you were to look at it from like the metaphor of a car, right? Like we've got to take care of the car. We've got to service it. You've got to put air in the tires. You've got to go and get a warrant. This is what you have to do in New Zealand anyway.
Mm.
Get a registration. I know it's different in many different parts of the world, but those things, they take time.
Mm.
However, what it means is that you're safe. You're going to get a lot more longevity. You're going to get more mileage out of your car
Yep.
versus if you just like run it into the ground because you're just trying to keep going and keep going and keep going and keep going and
Yeah.
not taking care of it.
Yeah, yeah. And kind of also what came into my mind then was it's like going on a trip in your car to continue the car analogy, but not looking at any of the waypoints of where you need to get to and just hoping. And just so it's like, well, I know that like businesses will do planning, right? They'll have planning kind of annual planning or biannual planning or something like that. Are we doing the right things? Are we heading in the right direction? And as you get bigger, look, I don't want to I don't want to state the difficulty that is annual planning in a business which has tens or hundreds of thousands of people. That's an undertaking, right? When you're smaller, for sure, the ability to kind of continually assess and go, is this the right direction? Like, and slowing down to speed up and going, is this right? Are we in the right direction? Oh no, we actually needed to take that turn. Ah, okay, let's take that. Okay, what about that? Are we in that? No, let's take that turn. And just kind of like asking those questions and holding the space to go, is that right? Is such a key leadership skill, isn't it? And actually, who I've been talking about that a lot with is Gemma Longfellow, who you and I have spoken with. I speak with her all the time about that kind of, well, we need to step out of just in move ahead mode and be into, well, what's going on mode.
Mm.
Mm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That
Yeah.
ability to kind of step out and you, as you kind of said earlier, it's almost like trying to like remove yourself
Yep.
and be like, I was going to say as objective as possible because everything is subjective, or that's my belief anyway, because we hold so many biases. And so, whilst we can wish that we're objective,
Yeah.
we can't really be.
Yeah.
Um,
That's true.
that skill, I was
Mm.
going to say that skill to be able to step back and kind of observe and see things and be curious. That's really important when it comes to, if we link it back to coaching, to be able to look at yourself and say, as you said earlier,
Mm.
okay, am I getting frustrated?
Mm.
Which is why I'm then either pushing things or I'm talking to people in a certain way or I'm trying to force things
Yep.
instead of, okay, well, what would it mean if I was to get curious about this here and be open
Yep.
and to see perhaps a different way that might be better than the way that I think that I know as well.
Yep.
I think that's the most beneficial thing that comes out of coaching is like you don't need to know everything
Yep.
because you're no longer needing to rely on what it is that you know,
Mm.
and instead you're supporting yourself, your team,
Mm.
everyone by working together and collaboration.
Yep.
And the whole is what's the gosh, it's escaped me. What's the saying? It's like the whole is the sum of its
Oh,
parts or
yeah.
something
The
along
the
the
sum of the
lines of
parts are
that.
greater than the whole.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
The
just how important it is to
No, wait,
acknowledge
is it
that.
the other way around? The whole is greater than the sum of its parts? I think it's the other way around. I feel like I should know that.
I'm
Uh,
like, that
yeah, yeah,
one, I
yeah,
can see it.
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Yeah, when the idea
and
being that when people are together, they are a greater force than if they're all working individually. So yes, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Got it. We got there.
yeah, we got there. Thank you. I was like, I knew you'd know. You've got
I
such an
didn't.
incredible brain for retaining things like that.
Um,
Yeah, and it just takes off so much
yeah.
pressure in terms of like you needing to know things. Like you don't need to know everything. You
Mm,
just need to know how to get the best out of people,
mm.
which comes down to being able to be a great coach.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Okay. Okay, so we've dived in a bit to, the important skill of self-awareness and then being able to hold space, really, I think are the kind of the two key kind of pillars we've talked about. And you and I have been designing this leader as coach course together, which it's been amazing. Like I've really enjoyed the time. I think it's sort of it's been life-giving for both of us, hasn't it? Or energy giving.
Yeah, I agree. It's been quite collaborative as
Mm,
well, which I really love.
mm,
And it's been great in terms of just hearing how you see things and how
mm,
I see things.
mm.
And yeah, I think, like I said earlier, like there's so much crossover,
Yeah, yeah.
despite the fact that we kind of come from two completely different worlds, really.
Yeah. Oh, we have the same accent. Um,
I don't know, yours definitely sounds like way more way more English
excuse me.
than Kiwi. Yeah.
Excuse me. All of the Brits listening to this will be extremely offended. Um, yeah, so I guess what I want to so we've sort of and those were two of the core tenets at the start, weren't they? The self-awareness and then kind of holding space. Then we sort of talked about like establishing and maintaining agreements, which you used a brilliant word for, which is it whakawhanaungatanga?
Yes. Yeah. Good pronunciation, Sam.
Well, I have very good Maori pronunciation. I wish I could speak more of it, but yeah.
Mm,
So that is a Maori word, which is literally that, isn't it? It's like kind of setting the relationship up for success.
yeah.
Which, if we're talking leader as coach, is just simply asking, well, what do you want from this relationship, and how does success look like for you, right? Or how does
Mm,
success look for you? So, um, if somebody comes to you, to use that example again, if somebody comes to you and says, oh, I just need, I need, have you got a minute? It's like, yeah, cool. What can I help with? Like, what do you need right now? Well, actually, I just need to tell you this. Okay, so you just need me to listen. Is that right? And actually, establishing and kind of contracting is a word that I would use, but I think it's establishing a quick contract at the start, isn't it? To go, what is actually this relationship right now? And being very clear on that and what success looks like for them, so that you can kind of walk through that with them. Yeah.
I really love just that quick example that you gave. It was quite clear in terms of what success looks like, right?
Yep.
However, that can be different
Mm,
depending on the person, depending on what that person needs. But what I loved in that example was that it showed that you care,
mm,
like you cared enough to be able to ask those questions, which
mm,
essentially is what whakawhanaungatanga is, or
mm,
relationship building and connection. It's about that care aspect versus, I can think of many times where people might have approached someone and it's like, hey, do you have a minute? And it's like, quick, like, no, go away, shut
mm,
down,
mm,
whatever. And of course, sometimes you don't.
mm,
And it's also understanding, okay, well, does this person come to me, or is this like a once-off occasion? Like there's so many things that you need to be aware of, which is that emotional intelligence part that you and I have spoken about in this coaching program that we're creating. You need to have that emotional intelligence to be able to understand, okay, well, do I need to stop what it is that I'm doing right now? And is this more important
mm.
than this thing that I'm doing here?
Yeah, 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 definitely. Okay, and then I think the thing that you and I as well kind of realized is that, and we do get to this in this program, don't we, of actually teaching some coaching modalities, right? And that I remember having that conversation of, yep, there's all of this pre-work before you get even close to, and here's how you do some coaching, right?
Yeah. I mean, we spoke about it in the beginning. I think it's important for you to be able to know yourself,
Mm,
know who you are, your identity as a leader,
yeah.
what that means
Mm,
for you to be able to go into a coaching space
mm,
and be effective.
mm,
Like, sure, you can have all the tools,
yeah.
but what I've experienced in the past for myself, for other people that I know, is it doesn't matter like if you have all the tools, if you can't do the most important thing,
Mm,
which is self-reflect
yeah.
around who you are and how
Mm,
you show up.
yeah.
You can try and faster things with a coaching tool and a coaching framework,
Yeah.
but if you're being a dick, it doesn't fucking matter.
Yeah, I love that. So true. Um,
Well, it doesn't. It
no,
doesn't matter.
no, it doesn't. You're right. Yeah,
You,
yeah.
you know, if you're showing up and you're being an asshole and people are talking about you behind, behind your back and
Yeah.
talking about how much of a shit leader you are because you don't listen or, you never follow through with the things that you say that you do or whatever. It doesn't matter if you can coach.
Yeah.
I actually had, um, so to give some people some reference, I'm also a CrossFit coach and a weightlifting coach. And this week I had a member of mine say to me, and it was so sweet and so beautiful. He said to me, the thing that I love about you is that you know how to connect with people and you know how to care about, like, for people. And
Mm,
he said, you can be the most technically effective coach,
mm,
but it doesn't matter. Like, the reason why you're effective is
mm,
because you
mm,
know how to connect with people and you care. That's
mm.
what makes the difference.
Love
That's
that.
why you get results.
Mm,
And I'm like, well, yeah, it's because that's who I am.
mm,
But again, in saying that,
yeah.
those are two important skills that can be learned and can be developed because, there's been times where I have been selfish and there's been
Mm,
times where I haven't given a shit about people because I've been going through all my own stuff and I actually needed to take a step back and
mm,
focus on myself and my own healing to be able to show up as a better, effective leader.
yeah. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, it's true, isn't it? So the kind of the order of play here is that figure out yourself and get to know yourself, have that unconditional positive regard for the person that's coming into your space and be able to hold space for them because you know yourself so well. Then really establishing and kind of the whakawhanaungatanga, the establishing um, that agreement with them, the contract of like, what do you actually need from me in this moment right now? And then you can think about your coaching tools. Yeah. Yeah, nice. And I
Otherwise,
think
it's just
that's
like this plaster and this
yeah, yeah.
big, what's the word? It's just like, I don't know, I really dislike companies and businesses that virtual signal things and um like they say one thing but then they do another thing,
Gotcha.
virtual
Yeah, yeah. Actions
signaling.
don't follow
Yeah.
words, or words don't follow
Yeah,
actions. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Gotcha.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And so often a lot of businesses can invest in
Mm.
different coaching programs or
Yep.
development, again, as a plaster,
Mm.
as a short-term
Yep.
kind of fix, right?
Yep.
But the difference between those and what it is that we're creating
Mm.
is this is creating a long-term
Mm.
solution
Yep.
that is going to benefit you for life
Yep.
and then everyone else around you.
Mm.
And that's what makes it different.
Yeah, yeah. Love that. So, where can people find you, my friend?
Um, Best place is, we're going to say LinkedIn.
Nice.
Yep.
Own that.
Own that, LinkedIn. So you can find me on LinkedIn if you search my name, Rawinia Judson. Otherwise, I'm most active, to be honest, on Instagram.
Yep, nice.
And again, you can find me there if you search Rawinia with 2 underscores Judson. Those are the two most active spaces you can currently find me.
Cool. And do you have a website?
I do, rawiniajudson.com.
Perfect. Nice. And so you and I, the plan is that we'll be launching this, I think, later this year, in the world of LinkedIn, taking our first cohort. Was that what we're thinking? Should have talked
I
about this
love that
before.
we're talking about this on the podcast. Absolutely, yes. Yeah.
Cool. Great. I see what I did there. I just got some commitment from you out loud.
100%. Yeah, before the end of the year,
Yeah,
which is
nice.
very soon.
Yeah, nice. Look, thank you for bringing your vulnerable story, your wisdom, and thank you for just being you and holding space because I love the way that you do it. Yeah, like I said, I always feel like I can talk and there's never going to be an interruption with you, which I'm still, excuse me, I'm not perfect at. So I really value the space you hold when you do that and the way you do it. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's so nice. Yeah, I just value our friendship and I really love the way that you ask questions. I think that's definitely one of your top skills.
Nice
You're
one.
a great coach. So, but
Could you go and
you
like
ask
and like put
great
that on
questions.
LinkedIn, like do the skills thing? Just kidding.
Yeah.
No, thank you very much.
Yeah, and I'm excited. I'm excited for this cohort to go through this program
Yeah.
and for the skills that they're going to gain, but I would also say more importantly, who you become in the
Mhm.
process,
Yep.
because my belief is that leadership comes from being who you are and how you show up and what it is that you model.
Mm.
And
Yep.
people learn that way, right? We spoke about that
100%.
earlier. And so,
Yep.
yeah, I think that it's going to be great, which sounds really cheesy, but
No, well, yep.
yeah, it's needed. It's definitely needed.
Yep. Agreed. And thank you again. And yeah, let's do this again soon. And if you've liked this podcast, please like, subscribe, share it with your mates, and then jump on braverleaders.com. Look at all our free resources, share them with your mates too. They are yours for the taking. Just left for me to say thank you again, Rawinia, and I will speak to you very soon.
Well, thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks for tuning in to Braver Leaders, the podcast where we discuss with leaders where they got leadership right, but also where they got it very, very wrong. If you'd like to know more, visit us on braverleaders.com or you can email us directly on team@braverleaders.com. Stay tuned and we'll see you very, very soon.